I think with that, we're going to be moving into our actual fourth round, as we have a couple rounds left. So our next game is going to be Agnes, who we've seen before, versus Chris, who we've also seen before. So we currently have Chris and Agnes sitting down and getting ready to play. Chris has to put $4 on the table to Agnes's 2, just because he has been playing so incredibly and he is such an experienced player. So Agnes has a lot to play for here.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a fun matchup. I mean, we've seen Agnes's strategy in her game, and we've seen Chris's word knowledge and strategy as well. So we'll like to see how this pans out. It could be a really close game.
Definitely. Well, Chris will be going first, and we'll get the scores fixed up in just a second. Both of these players are 2-1, so anything can happen. And we saw Agnes was playing brilliantly before. So I think Chris has to be worried, although not with a draw like that, starting out with a blank as the first tile out of the bag. That's always nice to see, as Chris is going to start off with a couple bingos. He has Therme, Methane, and I think he has another one, his Machete, to possibly come down as well.
I mean, yeah, Chris is definitely going to open up with a bingo. Depends on which one he's. And depends on the positioning. I mean, I don't think any of these bingos has the H on a double word. Or does, or Therme. Okay.
Therme does, and that's going to be what we see, I think. As I quickly get this set up, Therme is going to come down, and that's never something that you want to see as your opponent on your first turn. It always feels just like a little kick, like the tile gods just don't like you very much when your opponent drops down a bingo on your first turn and you're stuck with a rack like BDDOOH.
I mean, Agnes is definitely looking for some overlaps from high scoring players. I mean, there is the HM, so maybe she's definitely looking to take advantage of that.
Yeah, the HM could come really useful here. It's a type of hard overlap to see, but the way that I think that she'll see this is she might see DOH on top of Therme and then realize that if you add an A there, you can make Oda, which would score her 32 points, which is a really nice score for this pretty much clunky rack on this first turn. Some other ideas to shout out is that she has the possible play of hoboed, turning hobo into a past tense verb, and that would also help clean up probably her rack as best as it can get, getting rid of the O's and the B and the H. I'm not sure if it's something that I would necessarily recognize right away as a real valid word, just because you never think of hobo as a verb rather than a noun.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she does seem to have DOH set up.
So the question is whether she realizes that she can add the A just to make it Oda rather than Do. Although if she keeps that A, it still scores pretty well and it'll be a nice play. It'll just score 6 points less. I've known, oh, it's interesting right now. She almost has it set up on her rack. I wonder if we'll see it come down. Now, do you think it's worth considering this position to play something like Hob with the HE going to the right? Because you know you have that O to take advantage of next turn.
Especially having, I mean, I feel like it makes sense. I do think that I would still go with the points of Oda, or at least Do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Duke is going to come down. I think it makes sense. A lot of people really don't like that B. And
Mhm.
the benefit of this is that she has a good position set up for herself because that H scores really well on this type of early open board. I mean, it's going to go under EH. It could go on top of HOM as she can throw like ABA or OBA going to the right. So it makes sense what she's done so far. And moving over to Chris's rack, he has a couple possibilities open. I mean, that E onto the right of Therme is definitely the most tempting spot. You can do something like Wig there, which will just score 20 points while cleaning up his rack pretty well. And then on top of that, he has some interesting two-letter playthroughs to play with Devil or Vide or Vigor. And these are all worth considering as well, just because he needs to get rid of that V, and getting rid of that W would help. And more than anything, he needs to drop an I somewhere.
Right. I mean, considering he is ahead and he has these clunky tiles, I mean, getting rid of them doesn't seem like such a bad move.
Definitely. Yeah, I relate to Josh Sokol in the chat right now, where these games, right after we watch that masterclass fireworks of a Blitz game, feel so slow. But there is some beauty to longer games like this when you get to see the strategy play out. And I think we get to really see higher level strategy and higher level games when we're in a position like this. Now, Chris's play of wide is really interesting here. It does address some of the things he needs. It gets rid of the I and the W, but I really don't love the leave of VGLC, especially with the I, because it doesn't work on this board unless he draws something well. Like, he almost has no plays that can go down that get rid of that V. The W doesn't work well with the I, so you're not going to be able to play parallel. And none of those letters like to work with the E, so you can't even play across.
No, yeah, it's really interesting why he played wide over Vide. I mean, do you think you have any like suggestions for his reasoning?
It's interesting. It might just be that he didn't see it. Maybe he has some other possibilities. Maybe he saw even that next turn he'll have Vigil through the I and wide, which might be a very clever setup play. But I think it's simply too risky given that your opponent is most likely going to take advantage of the best spot on the board, which is right next to wide going parallel. As of right now, Agnes has a nice play of Hode going right on top of that spot I was talking about last turn, making HOM and OBA, and that still would block Chris's Vigil. And if Agnes does make that play of Vigil, Chris really isn't going to have very many options that are going to leave him in a good position. I mean, he has Bing going on top of it, but that still keeps the V and the L and the C in a way that don't really work together very well. I mean, he's lucky he has the ing leave just because it works so well with a lot of tiles. But we're seeing the consequences of playing wide there instead of wide or wake or something else. And it looks like she's really considering all of her possible options here. I mean, with a play like wide is really scary. Dropping two tiles like that signals to your opponent that you have some better tiles coming. Um, I mean, just because of how many other options it is, it really seems like he's trying to save those five tiles rather than them also not being the nicest. Now, this is interesting. It looks like Agnes is thinking of just playing a hoe rather than a Hode. And it might be a setup play, but I think it's probably not, just more worth it to take those extra 6 points, even if it leaves you with some extra vowels on your rack.
Yeah, I feel like maybe either she's setting up or she's just trying to consider this like vowel to consonant ratio and she's just worried that AIE is too weak for what she could potentially draw. I mean, we see this. I mean,
Yeah.
she only draws a J, and keeping that D maybe just gives her a little bit of saving grace.
And we're going to see bling come down, which is a great play, and it's going to help Chris clean up those clunky consonants that he had. And the ing here is coming in nicely to be able to drop some extra consonants in for pretty cheap. But he's keeping CV on his rack, which it's certainly not the worst lead that you could have, but it's not something that you want to keep. I don't think those tiles have especially good synergy with each other, and they're definitely not friendly to the board right now. I mean, the board seems really closed down, and unless he can get some nice plays on the left side of wide or underneath Therme, he's not going to be scoring a lot of points for the foreseeable future.
Oh, yeah, I quickly found Jadeite, which is a great way to score and open up the board. She's definitely looking to bingo soon, so Jadeite's just a nice opening.
Yeah, Jada is going to come down, which is great. It's not quite a bingo, although I can't tell which tile she kept, but it's going to be able to drop down a lot of those clunky tiles and put her in a really good position moving into the next turn. She did, unfortunately, miss the opportunity to play Jedi, which I was very excited to see come down. I don't think we've had a single new word come out yet.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely seen opportunities for it. I feel like the points just aren't worth it.
Yeah, I don't think anything has been especially like there's never been a cause for it since these
Mm.
players really more than wanting to play these new flashy plays are trying to win these games. Although I would absolutely love to see Zonky come down at some point. That would make my day.
Sure.
Now, Chris has a couple of strong plays, especially because he drew that Z. So something like Zen to the left of Jadeite would score 32 points, but it is quite risky. It's opening up a lot if your opponent has an O and perhaps an S, exactly like Agnes does. There's the very pretty play of playing VEENA underneath Therme, making he widen an aura, playing through the E and Jadeite. And the thing that's nice about that is that you keep CUZ on your rack, which can score well in a lot of positions. My only problem with that is that it doesn't score well in a lot of positions on this board, and you're going to be left in a little bit of a rough position.
Oh, people are already finding Agnes's bingos.
Wow. Spoiler alert.
He plays Seal, keeping CUNV.
That's interesting to me. I don't think that that's my favorite play here. I really think that you have the opportunity to score a lot more in the future, and you need to start getting rid of those clunky VU tiles. And you can see it. You can see it come back to bite him right now. He's kept that V for 3 turns now, and now he has doubles, and he's going to be a little bit stuck next turn. He's going to have to play something like a VAV for only 18 points. I think even though it's worth nearly 20 less points, something like Vug playing off your V and your U is probably his best play here. I mean, one, it closes down the board and he's in a winning position right now. And two, it keeps the ZAEN leave, which is going to be really nice coming up in the future.
No, I definitely agree. I feel like he's just been sort of prolonging this like rack issue for so long, just trying to score, which makes sense because he's not at the most comfortable lead and this board is beginning to open up. But I think in this situation he's realizing like the gravity of what's happening.
Yeah, and moving over to Agnes. Agnes has 3 bingos here. They are all 8s. And there are some very exciting words in there. I mean, diamonds is the first one that I spotted. And I like it because it's a real word, and we don't get real words very often in Scrabble. She also has goddams, which should come down, which is her least scoring one, going through the G in playing. But the most interesting one to me is that she has Domesday, Domesday, as in a day for domes, which seems to be a archaic alternative spelling for doomsday.
I mean, that's an
Now
amazing
that
word.
seems like the type, yeah, it seems incredible, and it seems like the type of play that you would never be able to find unless you've studied it and you know it's good. Um, but quite the interesting play to have in your back pocket, and I'm sure some of the top players, even at this tournament, might see that and play it down. And while we're waiting for Agnes to spot one of these bingos to come down, I just want to give a quick shout out to Let's Play Scrabble.com. If you're enjoying this content and you want to learn more about the competitive Scrabble scene, come check us out. There's a lot of really good content and information on there, whether you want to get better or you want to try to get involved with the tournament. Everything you can possibly want is going to be on Let's Play Scrabble.com. And if you're enjoying this content, give us a like and a subscribe. We really appreciate it. Now, unfortunately, Agnes is not going to find Domesday, but it's going to be playing her top non-bingo play of Dom, which makes a lot of sense. It scores pretty well, and it keeps some really nice letters on her rack. Despite scoring nearly 40 less points than the lowest scoring bingo goddams, its valuation is only 1 less. And the reason for that is that the tiles that she leaves on her rack are really good, and she's almost guaranteed to get a bingo in her next turn.
Which I think she does. And Chris exchanges
Exactly.
everything, which I think was, I feel like,
It
about
makes
time.
sense.
Yeah.
Because he's been delaying playing off that V and the U, he's found himself in a position where he absolutely just can't score any points for a turn, which is a really big consequence. It's not something that you want to happen. And because of that, he's going to lose a turn, whereas maybe if he played something like a Vug, he might still have the possibility to score pretty well this turn.
Yeah, and Agnes probably spot her bingo. I think she is like accused across Jadeite. There might be higher scoring stuff.
I saw Scubud, and some other possibilities. Um, yeah, it seems like Accused is going to be her highest scoring one, although I'm not sure if it's her best play. The problem is that
Right.
it opens up both triples to some very heavy attacks that could easily come down. There's some really nice sevens, and this is where studying your sevens is going to come in handy because there's a lot of them that could come down right here, and all of them have their own benefits. So I'll quickly shout out some that she could play alongside Blings. She has Crusade, she has Accused, she has Uncase, and it would be really interesting to see something like Casked with a Q come down underneath Jadeites.
Oh wow, it seems like she
And
might
it
be playing
looks,
fixed.
yeah, Uncased looks like it's going to come down. Now this, unlike the other ones, puts a vowel right next to the triple word score, but it's a U. Do you think this is risky enough to try to avoid?
Definitely not. I mean, and look at the alternatives. Um, Accused, again, we talked about it. Like, it really just opens 2 lanes, and I feel like maybe she was doing this for safety purposes. I mean, she really just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want
And
to throw the.
as far as vowels go, putting a U next to a triple is probably the safest you can be, other than maybe an I. Um, the biggest problem is that it's going to open up this D spot to the triple, and I think this is going to come in for a lot. Chris has the opportunity right now to play um, almost the same play that was played against him of Lux or Deluxe, but he's going to take his best play of Exiler.
Yeah.
It's going to be 45 free points coming down, dropping the X and cleaning off his rack so he has a nice chance to draw another blank. And yet again, he's deciding to keep the U, which I think is interesting. I mean, in this position, I think there are very few tiles which you wouldn't make this play of Exiler for, just because it's worth so much.
Mhm.
But it is now I think the third or fourth turn where he's kept a U on his rack.
Wow.
Now, this area underneath Therme keeps coming up in the suggested areas because right now Agnes has or Chris is going to have the great play of Nay, making a homie and widen, which would score nearly 40 points. But moving over to Agnes's rack, she's stuck in a really tough position where she has a lot of low scoring tiles without very much synergy between them. It seems like most of her top plays are just to play off 4 of her tiles and try to draw something better, like unlit or until, which is exactly what she's doing. It
And
seems
she
like
keeps
Agnes has really been making some of the best plays every single turn. She's being really strategic. She's spotting what she needs to spot, and it's working out because despite um, being up against Chris, who's 200 rating points above her, she's keeping it neck and neck.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Unlit was a really nice dump to get rid of that and keep AIL, which is pretty good rack to potentially draw bingos and high scoring plays, which seems like
And
she's
K
gonna
is going
do
to
it.
come down, which is a great play.
Mm.
Now, this is a little bit risky. It scores 39 points, so it's definitely worth it. But a lot of plays can come down to the left of that word. I mean, anything that can go in front of add, as long as you have an E or an A as your second letter, will go down. And a lot of letters go in front of YE, like the P and the L and the T that we see on Agnes's rack right now. And I think we're going to see a bingo come down onto the triple word score, which is going to put Agnes quite far into the lead. There's 5 bingos in this rack, and I think they're ones that many beginners learn quickly on because they are so common. Um, but Agnes is going to go with Pleiades onto the triple. Now, the funny thing about this is that she could shift this play 1 tile up to simply score more points. But when you see a bingo, often there isn't much of a second thought, and you just want to play it down.
I mean, Chris is probably looking at Palladius, perhaps, or at least maybe he'll hold on to the T for something good with Palladius later on.
Yeah, it's interesting that she chose Pleiades there, because something like Palliast, 1 square up, doesn't give any roots, and it scores well, or it scores a little bit better, without giving anything back. But Chris keeps blitzing out these plays. I mean, you guys like the blitz games. We're getting some blitz games right now. Chris has only spent 7 minutes on this game as opposed to Agnes's 16.
Yeah,
He's
he's
really
definitely.
going through this quite fast.
Yeah.
And he's making great plays too. I mean, Auntie is a great way to clean up his 2Us. It scores well, and he's really putting the pressure on Agnes. I mean, in the end game, she's really might suffer given her lack of time. And right now, I mean, she has the Q, which isn't great, and there's no good spots on the board for it. I don't think she could even play it if she wanted to. However, that U from Uncase might come into play here, as she has the great play of 4, Four, for 33 points, completely cleaning off that area. Fro is going to come down instead, and that's still a good play. It's going to score well. But the tiles that she's leaving on her rack are QTKO. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's definitely a clunky leave. I feel like she's really just hoping that she gets some compatible tiles to score a lot with them. I mean, if she individually is able to score 20 plus, 25 plus points with each tile, I mean, she can definitely maintain her lead.
Definitely. And if she can draw like an A or an S, then that U in the top will become really useful as she can play Suk or Qua.
You can see she's kind of picking up the pace here. She plays Grok really quickly. It's a nice
Wow, I
play.
can't believe Chris exchanged there, which is one of the top suggested plays, but he had some other options that I think are worth considering. Even something just like none is going to score well. and clean up your rack a little bit better. Um, but yeah, Grok is gonna come down by Agnes, which is her best play. So she's really she's really putting it up to Chris. She's saying, "I'm going to play at this level. What are you going to do about it?" And Chris is put in a position where he's down and not drawing well, and he's not only going to lose his 2-1 lead, but $4 as well. Now, some people are pointing out that a E for Agnes would give her some great plays through that U up top, like Toke. Um, and I think, honestly, keeping the Q in this position might not be the riskiest play, just because that top position is going to be a little bit hard for your opponent to take advantage of and might give you some really high scoring payouts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, seems like Chris is really trying to find his ing bingo, and I feel like he's not really tempted to take that spot. But he plays
Mm-hmm.
Urk.
Urk is going to come down, and it's a good play. I think it's one of his top plays because he's really trying to get a bingo down. The board is open enough, and keeping RING is going to be great. And yes, we're going to see QUA come down, which is going to let Agnes just take advantage of a really good position to get another free 36 points. Oh, but wow, Chris has drawn the perfect rack as he now has a bingo ready to come down, and just in time too, since he's down nearly 200 points.
Yeah, like Annette was saying in the chat, what his play of Urk does block that lane from Grok, which I was also thinking about, but maybe he really was just hoping on drawing like an S. But I feel like that's almost less worth it than playing something with KI. But I mean, there's probably a good
Definitely.
reason for it.
And moving over to Agnes, Agnes has drawn exactly almost the rack that Chris exchanged in the beginning. She has double V's and the U, and a P and an F on top of that. What do you do in this position? I mean, she was up nearly 150 points, and now she's only has a 20-point lead on her opponent, and terrible tiles to try to defend it.
Yeah.
I mean, the
I mean, she's
top
definitely.
plays. I mean,
I feel like she's just definitely looking to score here. But I wonder where she'll be looking at, and she's probably looking at the pool too.
yeah, I mean, it feels like you need to get rid of one of these V's, but I'm not sure if that's the case. I wonder in this position if it's worth exchanging. I mean, the thing is, you have all of the bad tiles in the bag. So if you exchange, you're only going to draw tiles that you don't have, which is a good pull by the looks of it. Um, I mean, the clear disadvantage is that your opponent will catch up. But if they make a long play, they might draw the same V's and F's and U's that you just threw into the bag. So I can't. I mean, the top plays by the computer are something like Fun or Fen or Duvet, and each of these score 20 points, but they leave her with a terrible rack of like double V's and a U, and I simply can't imagine that that's a good position. Oh, wait, I misunderstood. She can't even exchange if she wanted to because there's nothing left in the bag, which means I honestly think it's possible for her to get double V locked.
I feel like her current priority, yeah, is really just to get rid of one fee. I feel like right now, I think she should consider sacrificing like points just to get rid of a V because it's going to get
Yeah,
much harder to get rid of it.
but from our perspective up top, we can see what she's going to draw, and it's WRN. and none of those are going to help her with her position. Wow, playing fun is so risky. It is the top play by the computer. I mean, she's playing fantastically according to her calculator, but keeping double VP just is so scary here. And she's not going to draw the tiles that she needs to help deal with it. I mean, what do you do in this position? Your opponent has the perfect tiles, and you're left with double Vs. At this point, Chris has to know that Agnes has at least one of those Vs.
Mm.
I mean, the benefit is that he might think that there is a V in the bag and try to open up a spot for himself to deal with that, because the fact that you didn't play a V indicates that you either don't have either of the Vs or you don't have one of the Vs. And once again, the best play is to play underneath Therme with something like NAE for 25 points, Nay with Widen Aura and Home. This game is going to come right down to the wire, and it's all because of Agnes's terrible draw at the end.
I mean, she does have. I think there are also people are talking about it in chat. She does have vibe with Urk, um, and if Chris believes that there's still a V in the bag, he probably might not block that spot.
But she doesn't. I don't. Yeah, I mean, she's going to be. It's just not a great position for her to be in right now. And I think fun is a smart play and it scores well and it puts her up, but I think it's too risky to not try to get rid of one of those V's. I think, like people point out in the chat, something like Duvet
Mm-hmm.
wins it. But she does have two places to drop her double V's, which is really good. Wow, this is an incredible play by Chris. He recognized that Agnes has to get rid of one of her V's or both of her V's this turn. She is stuck to playing Verve or Vive, and he has the final N, so he can open up that bottom area for the bingo that he needs. I mean, alternatively, from Agnes's perspective, Agnes knows exactly what he has and knows that he has no bingo.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I mean, this is great play by Chris. He's really calculating exactly what he needs. Now, this is interesting. Agnes is playing off her last vowel to block this position, and in doing so, locking herself in with a V. I haven't done the calculations, but I don't think that this is the right play. I think that this puts everything right risky to the end, and she might even be able to outrun him. But if you are worried about a bingo coming down, then you have to block it, and this is what she's doing.
For sure. I mean, her time is pretty low, so you know, if she had tracked correctly or incorrectly, she might not really have enough time to go back and look. And it seems like Rev at least sort of ensures to her that he's not scoring there. But if she did know, though, if she did know what he had, I feel like Rev, there are definitely like other stronger plays. I mean, he still has Cam and Scam with him, so he definitely knows he can score some points there, as well as under Therme. But because I don't think what he
Definitely.
could potentially score is enough. So I think maybe she really did it because she didn't know what he had because of the low time.
I think she's done the math and she realized that she's going to win if he doesn't bingo. And all she needs to do is that she needs to block a bingo. And even if she's 90% sure that he doesn't have a bingo, if
Right.
there is a 10% chance that you're wrong, it is worth it to sacrifice the spread. A win is so much better than a spread in a tournament like this. And she's playing safe and smart, and that's all you can say about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, she's gotten rid of one V. She can get rid of another. She can even get rid of a V and a W at the same time, which is just great for her.
Hmm. And I wonder what must be going through Chris's head right now. He's probably just Like in a game like this, it becomes mathy, and Chris must be so grateful that he has been playing fast and he has this time to calculate. Because right now he is going through every possible endgame and doing the math. I can guarantee you about what positions he will win. He knows Agnes's rack. He knows that she has the V and the W, and so it's his job right now to try his best to prevent her from getting that down. I mean, the most apparent spot on the board right now is that Agnes can clear off both of her clunky tiles with Vow through Trigrons. Um, but the problem is that to block that, Chris is going to have to give up a lot of points. And this honestly brings back to whether in was the best play for him. I mean, I feel like often, I mean, I'm guilty of this myself, where in an endgame, I don't necessarily do the math out. I look and say, this gives me a chance to win, I think, and then I play it. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's possible for Chris to look at it and realize that there is very few things that he can draw that allows him to bingo. And if he doesn't draw bingo, or if he does draw bingo, Agnes is going to be able to block it. People point out in the chat that the only tile that was left, or there were two tiles left. There was the N and another tile. And if he draws the N, he doesn't have a bingo through N. And if he doesn't draw the N, that means Agnes has it, and she's going to take advantage of the N spot that he just set up with N. This is going to come down to a really tense endgame because of this, but I think we're going to come to realize pretty soon that Chris simply has run out of moves. He doesn't have a possible score to get high enough. His best play on the board right now is to do either Sen or Say. At least, sorry, by best I mean the highest scoring is to do Sen or Say, hooking with Frogs, which would score 30 points, putting him within 20 points of Agnes. But then Agnes drops down Vow through the O, and suddenly she's left with really with simply being too far ahead for Chris to outscore her.
Wow. I mean, he plays none there. Definitely sacrificing the points. I think he wants to get some of her tiles. I mean, she's definitely not going to get rid of all her clunky letters. I feel like that's what he's hoping for.
Yeah, and I'm interested in why he played none rather than nani, the which was a new word as of the last dictionary, but I'm sure he's done the math out, and this gives him more places to play out in the end game. So now Agnes has to consider how she's going to deal with this. And the interesting thing is that I'm not even sure she needs to play her V yet. She might have the ability to take advantage of that none spot to score a lot of points. Although, now that I'm looking at it, she might not have any good spots. Oh, maybe that's why he played none, so that
Mm-hmm.
she didn't have any strong horizontal or vertical overlaps. Now, the top play by the computer is actually quite clever, which is to play Whomp through HOM, which scores 18 points, which is really high, and just keep the V because you're going to outscore. But I think you can honestly save that for the future and do something like Vet right now through the E and Zeal. That scores you 10 points, and know that you have Whomp for next turn if your opponent
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go out. Although I think the chance that the opponent doesn't go out is small. Let me quickly check. Yeah, his opponent is going out with Scam, definitely. I mean, these players must be just running through all the possibilities in their heads. Chris is looking for any chance to win, and Agnes is looking for any chance that she could not win. And I do like what Chris is doing here. He's putting the pressure to Agnes. He's not giving her a clear out. And the benefit of this is something I learned from a Will Anderson video, is that you should always give your opponent the chance in the end game to mess up. Even in a lost game, your opponent could make some terrible blunder, and this has happened before. I've played a game where opponent accidentally set up like a 2 letters that I could play through to go out, and it lost the game for them. I mean, Agnes can't possibly block Chris's outplay of Annie's or Ains with Scam, and that scores 24 points. But as soon as Agnes realizes what his outplay is, wait, she made her play. She played Vet for 10, putting her at 418. I haven't done the math yet, but this is going to end up being really close, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the sportsmanship of these players after this intense game where I'm sure both of them were calculating all of the possible ways that they could make their opponents suffer. At the end of it, they smile and shake hands, and they're just discussing the game. And look at that final score, 418 to 403. Agnes clinches it in the very end after an incredible endgame by Chris.
I mean, yeah, she played amazingly. I think this is the first game where the underdog has actually won. And I mean, it's a testament to Agnes's skill. I mean, her calm
Yeah, she's been playing
calculations,
great.
and it paid off.